I spent 7 years saving for our dream cruise. The day I was ready to book it, the account had only $6. That number hit me harder than I care to admit. I refreshed the page 3 times. Still $6. 17,294 gone. Not a single charge from the cruise line. Just withdrawals. Flights. Luxury hotels. Spa charges. All linked to my husband's so-called business trips. That's when I knew. Not suspected, knew. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just opened a new spreadsheet. My name is Jenna. I'm 38. Dental hygienist by trade, practical to a fault, and I live in a town where everyone knows everyone and, worse, their opinions. I've been married to Nate for almost 8 years. He used to say I kept our world grounded, that he was the dreamer and I was the one who made things real. Apparently, that included making real bank transfers to fund his solo vacations. The cruise had been my idea. A Mediterranean voyage, 14 days, 5-star suite with a private balcony. I wanted to surprise him. Just show him the tickets one day and say, let's go. So I opened a separate account and set automatic deposits, small at first, then larger once I picked up some weekend cleaning gigs. He knew about it. Said he'd match my deposits, help build it faster. He never did. I should have noticed earlier. He'd always have an excuse. Something about invoices delayed or clients ghosting after the expo. Then there were the red flags, small things at first. Like the time I saw a charge for a high-end hotel in Aspen the same weekend he told me he was stuck in Detroit. Or when I offered to join him on a trip and he laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Babe, these aren't exactly spouse-friendly." And I still believed him. But that morning 3 weeks ago, I had the page open, the cruise tab up, credit card ready. I was going to book it for September. I'd even ordered a little anchor charm bracelet to wrap the tickets in. And then, $6. 21, my hands went cold. Not from the number, but from the way the bank statement unfolded like a confession letter. Withdrawals matching every single trip he'd taken in the last year. From Miami to Scottsdale to Palm Springs. All filed under business. Except the hotels had names like the Indigo Collection and Whispering Palms Villas, places with private jacuzzis, champagne service, and towel art shaped like swans. There were no conference centers. No client invoices. Just one reservation after another for one guest. That night, I didn't eat. I sat at the kitchen table until my coffee went cold, scrolling through every transaction, every withdrawal I didn't remember making. My stomach nodded in this slow, pulsing way, like grief disguised as math. Nate came home around 9 p.m., whistling. "Hey babe," he said, tossing his keys into the bowl. "You look wiped. Long day." I looked at him. Really looked at him. He was tanned. A little too tanned for someone who just spent a week at a warehouse expo in Indiana. New watch. Smelled like hotel soap and someone else's cologne. I didn't say anything right away. He pulled leftovers out of the fridge, microwaved them, started talking about a potential new client in San Diego. I waited until he sat down. Then I asked, "Did you use the vacation fund?" He blinked. "What?" "The cruise account. It's empty." A pause. Just long enough for the lie to load. "Oh, yeah, I meant to talk to you about that." I had to dip into it. "Business expenses. Temporary. I'll put it all back." He said it so casually, like it was $10 and not my entire dream. "Emergency expenses like a couple's massage at Whispering Palms?" That's when the facade cracked. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said quickly. "You're overreacting. It's not what it looks like." "Then tell me what it is, Nate." He didn't. He just stared. Fork still in his hand. "And me?" I said nothing else. I stood up, took my coffee, and went out to the porch. I sat in the dark with my blanket and my silence, and I started rearranging everything I thought I knew about my life. He told me we'd see the world. I didn't know he'd start early. Alone. Over the next few days, I moved like a ghost. I smiled through work, polished teeth, chatted about school starting and cavity-free streaks. At home, Nate acted like nothing had happened. He even forwarded me a Groupon for a weekend cabin getaway. Said it could take the edge off. I nodded, said I'd think about it. But I wasn't thinking about that. I was watching, listening, saving. I started backing up emails, exported the bank data, opened a new email account, created a cloud drive folder labeled recipes. Inside it, screenshots of every transaction, every lie, because the cruise might not happen, but something else would. I didn't take a suitcase when I left. Just a black leather backpack, packed with exactly 3 days of clothes, a copy of The Gift of Fear, my old journal, and a new checkbook from an account he didn't know existed. I left the engagement ring on the nightstand, no note, no drama, no hashtags. Just silence. The phone? That stayed on the kitchen counter, right next to the bottle of wine I knew he'd open the second he walked in and realized I wasn't home. I imagined him standing there with the bottle in one hand, scrolling through messages with the other, trying to decide if I was bluffing or just hormonal. He always used that word, hormonal, when I got quiet instead of loud. I drove 3 towns over, pulled into a gravel driveway shaded by overgrown pine, and climbed a narrow wooden staircase to a 1-bedroom guest house that smelled like old wood, mint leaves, and fresh air. The woman who owned it, a retired librarian named May, handed me the keys without asking a single personal question. She just looked at me and said, "Some people don't need words to explain their starting over." Then she handed me a chipped teacup with a tea bag already steeping. That night, I lay in bed fully clothed, blinds open, moonlight pooling onto the floorboards. I waited for something to hit: grief, rage, regret, but what came instead was stillness. Not peace, just stillness. Like the moment just before a fire alarm goes off. The next morning, I went walking. The trail behind May's property was narrow, shaded, and smelled like sap. I followed the path until it forked at a dry creek bed. That's where I saw it, a deer, still and alert, staring right at me through the brush. We locked eyes for a moment. No movement. Just mutual awareness. Then it bolted. That's when I felt it for the first time. I wasn't just gone. I was hidden. Nate didn't call it first. He texted, "Hey, where are you?" Then, "You okay?" 12 hours later, "Jenna, come on. You're scaring me." He tried a few voice notes, his favorite way to guilt me when he couldn't control the narrative in real time. I didn't listen. But I downloaded all of them to a folder named Echoes and left it alone. A digital evidence drawer, just in case. By day 3, the messages shifted tone. "You always run when things get uncomfortable." Then, "I never lied. You just don't understand how business works." And finally, "If you're trying to make a point, congrats. You did. Can we be adults now?" I didn't answer. I wasn't trying to make a point. I was trying to see who he'd become when no one was watching. And he made that clear faster than I expected. In less than a week, Nate's social media transformed. He went from concerned husband to thriving bachelor with the subtlety of a car crash. His new posts weren't about work. They were about freedom. The first photo was of a whiskey glass on a rooftop bar. Caption: "Clearing the fog. Finally." The second? Him and a woman, wine glasses clinking at sunset. Tagged at Castamarco. Her profile was public. Blonde, curated, marketing consultant. Location tagged? Scottsdale. A hotel I'd paid for. The internet ate it up. Comments like, "So happy for you," and "Finally living your truth," stacked under each post. One reply stuck with me, though. It was from someone named Rachel DeMarco. Cassandra's sister, maybe. It read, "Glad to see you escape the cage." I screenshotted it and saved it in a folder called September. Not rage. Just record keeping. What was more interesting than his glow-up tour, though, was what he wasn't posting. He never mentioned me by name. Never acknowledged the vacation fund, the disappearance, or the fact that the house we shared was suddenly half empty. He wanted control of the narrative without owning the wreckage. Typical. But it was his followers who made it obvious. People started speculating about divorce, new love, spiritual awakenings. Nate didn't deny a thing. The day Cassandra posted a photo of a weekend retreat and called it a soft launch into something real, I knew exactly what kind of person she was. I didn't get angry. I got curious. Back at the guest house, I sat on the floor with my laptop and started researching. Not Nate. Cassandra. Her marketing firm was small, boutique style, run by three women with trendy job titles and a shared love of buzzwords like authenticity and luxury brand synergy. Their client list was modest but respectable. Some small hospitality brands, a wellness retreat company, an overpriced candle subscription service. One link caught my attention, a blog feature from 6 months ago, praising the firm's success with a brand relaunch campaign for none other than Whispering Palms Resort. The same place Nate had charged to our account. The same place I'd found receipts for under his client travel. I clicked through to the article and read every word. And at the very bottom, under a caption about influencer partnerships, there it was, a photo of Cassandra clinking glasses with a hotel executive. She wore the same white linen dress she was wearing in the trip Nate said was strictly business. The same trip I found the $2,800 spa charge under. I didn't react. I opened a new browser window. Typed in Business Registry plus Cassandra DeMarco plus Scottsdale. Then I started downloading documents. Later that afternoon, I walked back down the trail behind May's place. Same creek bed. Same fork. No deer this time. Just wind and pine needles. But I wasn't there for the view. I had a call to make. I used a prepaid phone. Bought it at a gas station 2 towns over with cash. No apps. No history. I dialed a contact from my old life, someone I used to refer patients to when they needed dental claims reviewed. He worked for a fraud prevention firm now. Owed me a favor. I have a name, I said. He paused. Is this one of those personal but professional situations? Let's say I'm researching potential financial misconduct between 2 parties with overlapping interests. He laughed. You always were the cautious one. Not cautious, I replied. Just quiet. After I hung up, I went back to the guest house and poured myself a glass of tea. I stared at the wall above May's bookshelf where she kept framed botanical prints. I pulled my journal out from under the bed and wrote a single line across the top of the page. The cruise didn't happen. But something else is setting sail. That night, while May made pot roast downstairs, I pulled up my calendar and created an event for September 14th. I titled it simply, Reclaim Fund. I never needed to touch a single password. Not when the laptop Nate left in the attic still had Dropbox auto login enabled. I'd found it during the 3rd week at the guest house, shoved behind an old storage bin labeled Christmas Lights, 2019. He used to joke that I organized things like I was prepping for an audit. Turns out I was. One of the first folders I opened was named Client Assets, Cassandra D. Inside, pitch decks, influencer metrics, branded headshots, and a set of placeholder graphics labeled Q3 site updates. One of those placeholders? Her homepage header. A high-res JPEG of Cassandra smiling, arms crossed in front of a white brick wall. With 5 minutes of Photoshop, I softened the image just enough to blur her eyes mid-blink. I saved it under the same file name. Didn't change a thing, just uploaded it back into the shared drive. 3 days later, Cassandra's professional website updated. And the panic started. Of course, she didn't go public right away. That's not how people like her operate. First, she probably blamed the designer. Then her intern. Then she tried fixing it herself and broke something else in the process, likely the mobile layout, because the site went dark on phones for a full day. I know because I checked. Every hour. The image swap was a test. A breadcrumb. I needed to see how reactive she was. Turns out, the answer was very. But the real shift came later that week when I leaked one of Nate's fake vendor testimonials. It was embedded deep in a past proposal we'd written together for a California conference. I still had the original version stored on a USB drive in my glove compartment, one I'd backed up just in case he tried to pin the shady formatting on me. When he reused that same PDF in a recent client pitch, I knew it was only a matter of time before someone cross-referenced it. All I did was send an anonymous tip to a mid-level journalist who covered tech grifts and small business fraud. I attached both versions of the PDF, the original and the doctored one. In the email, I said, ask yourself why the company quoted here doesn't exist anymore. 48 hours later, she tweeted a teaser. Looks like another wedding vendor turned wannabe entrepreneur just got caught selling testimonials from the dead. The tweet got 3,000 retweets in a day. That was the crash point. That was when everything shifted from suspicion to spectacle. Cassandra was slated to appear on a live panel hosted by a lifestyle brand she'd been trying to woo for months. Topic: authentic branding in the digital age. It was streamed live on YouTube. Over 6,000 people tuned in. She wore a sleek navy jumpsuit, hair curled to perfection, voice honey smooth as she opened with, "Building trust in your brand starts with telling the truth." 10 minutes in, the LED screen behind her glitched. Briefly. A flicker. Then back to normal. But not before flashing, just for a second, a screenshot of a bank transfer. My bank transfer. Specifically, the one from my account to Whispering Palms Resort. $3,447.96. The same charge I found drained from the cruise fund. It flashed again. Longer this time. Then the panel cut to commercial. I hadn't inserted it. That was someone else. Probably the journalist. Or maybe a disgruntled ex-client. But whoever did it, they'd clearly been following the breadcrumbs. I watched the replay later that night, my laptop perched on the guest house windowsill, a glass of white wine sweating in my hand. I didn't cry. But when the comments under the live stream filled with "What was that screen?" and "Did she really use stolen money?" I closed the laptop slowly, leaned back in the chair, and just stared at the ceiling until the wine turned room temperature. Because for the first time since I left, I realized something. They weren't just falling apart. People were watching them fall. Nate tried to control the story. Of course he did. He posted a grainy black and white selfie with the caption, "When they come for your name, stay silent. The truth will stand." Comments were turned off. Likes were hidden. But screenshots don't lie. Someone reposted it with the caption, "Truth will stand, except your marriage didn't." That one went viral on TikTok. Cassandra's response came a few days later. A 10-minute Instagram Live. She spoke through clenched teeth, called the leak a calculated smear campaign, blamed jealous exes, and said she refused to be bullied into silence by women who can't handle being left behind. I watched the whole thing. Twice. But what got me, what nearly made me drop the glass, was the final 2 minutes. Cassandra leaned in, closer to the phone, and said, "And for those watching and thinking, maybe she deserves this, I want you to know something. I didn't take anything. I didn't lie to anyone. I fell in love. That's not a crime." Then she stared into the lens for a full 5 seconds. Like she was trying to reach me directly. Maybe she was. I hadn't posted anything publicly. Not even a whisper. But someone saw me at Danielle's wedding. That I know for sure. It was near sunset when I arrived that day, slipping into the back row, careful not to block any sightlines. I wore a long green dress and a silk wrap, my hair up, makeup minimal. I wasn't trying to blend in. I was just trying to exist without permission. Nate sat 2 rows ahead, his arm around Cassandra. I watched them during the vows, during the music, during the toasts. Cassandra laughed loudly at something one of the groomsmen said. Nate leaned in to whisper something, and she tilted her head back to kiss his cheek. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was above the theatrics. But when I saw someone snap a group photo and noticed I was in the far edge of the frame, blurred, barely recognizable, I felt something cold and strange settle behind my ribs. Not fear. Not regret. Just the realization that they would always, in some form, be watching for my shadow. Later that night, Cassandra posted a black story screen with white text that read, "Some ghosts don't know when to stay dead." I took a screenshot. Saved it under the folder titled September. That same week, 2 emails landed in my burner inbox. One from the fraud analyst I'd tipped off months ago, subject line, confirming coordinated vendor tampering across 3 clients. Do you have time for a call? The second, from the journalist with the Client Zero podcast. Her message was short. No emojis. No fluff. Just, "We've corroborated most of your paper trail. We'll hold your name unless you say otherwise. But people will want to know who lit the match." I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I opened a Google Doc, stared at the blinking cursor, and typed a single sentence across the top. Reclaim Fund, Narrative Draft V1. Then I hit enter. And began. By the time they figured out what I'd done, the real story was already scheduled to air. It started with a single upload. Just one file. Nothing flashy. Just a quiet, deliberate hand hovering over the send button at 8:03 p.m. the moment the moon broke through the cloud line, casting silver light across the guest house porch. I'd been waiting all day, sitting with the document open but untouched, letting the silence around me soak in. Cassandra was hosting a live Q&A that night, something about rebuilding your brand after adversity. It felt poetic. Fitting. I waited until I knew she was live, smiling into a ring light, reciting buzzwords like resilience and authenticity, and then I clicked. Send. The document, titled The Cruise That Never Happened, verified timeline landed in 3 inboxes simultaneously. The client zero journalist, a fraud attorney I'd quietly partnered with, and the executive assistant of a brand that had just renewed a 6-figure contract with Cassandra's agency. Every page, every screenshot, every timestamp had been checked, backed up, and cross-referenced. There were no emotional flourishes. No dramatic accusations. Just truth, stacked neatly like dominoes. And then I logged out. Shut the laptop. Poured a glass of wine and let the air return to my lungs in a way I hadn't felt in years. I didn't realize I was crying until I saw the tear fall directly into the glass, rippling the surface, soft and round and unannounced. I didn't sob. I didn't break. But for the first time since I'd stared down a $6.21 bank balance, I let myself feel the cost of what I'd carried. Because revenge done right doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes, it just feels like finally exhaling. The podcast episode dropped 2 weeks later. I didn't get an alert or a heads up. I just woke up to 5 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize and a single email from the client zero host with the subject line, live. Trending. Thank you. I opened Spotify and saw it, centered on the screen, a title etched like a confession in bold black font. Episode 128, The Cruise That Never Happened. The host's voice, always calm and measured, came in like a whisper through a storm. Today's guest saved for 7 years. Not for herself. For her marriage. For a dream vacation that never came. Because by the time she was ready to book it, the account was empty. Her husband, a self-proclaimed entrepreneur, had drained every penny and spent it on someone else. Then came the soundbite, my voice, digitized, unrecognizable, but real. It wasn't the money. It was the ease with which he lied. Like I was just another tool in the shed. Something to fund his fantasy until it was time to upgrade. I listened to the entire thing alone. Seated at the edge of my bed, sunlight spilling across my legs, the curtain dancing beside me like it didn't know the world had changed. Halfway through, the host read excerpts from Cassandra's brand pitch, then cross-referenced them with my screenshots. She described the unraveling of a social media empire that ran on performance and proximity to privilege. She didn't name names. She didn't need to. The internet figured it out in hours. The episode went viral by evening. A clip from it played on a flat screen at a bar in Charleston, where a girl on a bachelorette trip mouthed the words, no. Freaking way, as the host repeated, $17,294. Gone. And still, she didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She opened a spreadsheet. On TikTok, someone layered the audio over shots of cruise ships pulling away from port, adding subtitles like, "This is what real power looks like." Even Nate's sister shared the episode with a single caption, "Took me too long to believe her." I'm sorry. The story had a life now. A pulse. And I didn't have to say another word. Cassandra deleted her business site the next morning. No explanation. No apology. Just a 404 not found, where her empire used to be. Nate tried to spin. He always does. Posted a now-deleted story on Instagram. Real men survive storms. Especially when the lightning is fake. It had all the drama and none of the substance, like a child yelling into a void. Someone reposted it with the caption, "You weren't struck, Nate. You drowned." That afternoon, he emailed me. It was a burner account, some off-brand Gmail, but the subject line gave him away, "You win." Now what? The body of the message was short, terse, trying to sound above it all, but I could see the strain in every line. "Jenna, I hope it was worth it. You didn't just hurt me, you burned down everything. Clients, friends, my future. I would have apologized. You could have asked. You didn't have to go nuclear. I really did love you once. Nate." I read it once. Just once. Then I hovered over reply. Not because I planned to answer, but because I needed to feel the weight of that almost. The temptation to break the silence and fire back with every truth he couldn't bear to face. I thought of everything I could say. How he'd twisted kindness into currency. How he'd taken the one surprise I was saving just for him and spent it on someone else's tan lines. How he didn't fall apart because of me, he collapsed under the weight of his own rot. I didn't type any of that. Instead, I deleted the message. Then I shut my eyes, breathed deep, and let out a sound I didn't recognize. Not quite a sob. Not laughter. Just the release of something I'd been holding for far too long. I never replied. I didn't need to. A few days later, I left for the cruise. I packed light, essentials only. One suitcase. A dress I hadn't worn in years. The anchor bracelet I'd once planned to wrap around the booking confirmation when I surprised Nate. I wore it as I boarded, standing on the deck as the city grew smaller behind us. The sun was setting, casting gold across the waves, and somewhere below, a band played soft jazz for couples sipping cocktails. A woman near me adjusted her husband's tie, scolding him for something in that playfully annoyed way married people have. He rolled his eyes and smiled, and I smiled too, quiet, amused, untouched. Then I walked past them. Past the pool deck. Past the first bar where couples ordered overpriced rum drinks and toasted anniversaries. I didn't stop walking until I reached the back railing. There I stood alone. Unbothered. Unburdened. The bracelet, heavy now around my wrist, caught a gust of wind. It snapped, just like that. A small, delicate break. The anchor charm tumbled from my hand, bounced once on the railing, and disappeared into the sea below. I didn't reach for it. Some things are meant to be lost. When the ship's captain came over the speaker to announce our first port, I listened closely. Barcelona. The city Nate once claimed to visit on work. The one I now would walk into, fully on my own terms. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One message. From Maria, the woman who rented me the guest house. Heard your story. I always knew you had teeth under that quiet. I smiled. Not because I was proud. Or vindicated. But because someone saw me. Really saw me. And maybe, just maybe, others would too. I leaned over the railing, let the wind rush through my hair, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt nothing pulling me back. I never raised my voice. I didn't have to.